I would rather be here doing what God has for me here than anywhere else. Buenos días. ¿Cómo tan flaco? The second semester of my freshman year, I visited the college service on the Wednesday, first college service of the year. It was one of the most impacting moments of an experience I had had up to that point with God. And that next week, I jumped into, a small group on my campus. Immediately just kind of said, you know what? I am just gonna give everything I have to build God's kingdom as much as a 19-year-old can. I'm gonna go for it.
As I stayed for my 5th year to get my master's degree, I couldn't be involved in my sorority anymore. And so I found myself with all this free time. His co-leader in life group said, hey, why don't you come to our life group? And so I said, well, I have all this free time now, sure, I'll come.
Poster event on Facebook, let's go ahead and get the event up. I remember she came to that very first life group of the year. We went around sharing, what do you want to get out of this year? And I remember seeing Suzanne and her face just lit up. And she said, this year, I want all that God has for me. And I remember being so impacted by that.
I went on our college's trip to Mexico during spring break. And during that time, I just felt like God stirring up something in me, a heart for church planting. About that same time, we started dating. And it was just a fun adventure of exploring all that God was speaking and also knowing, okay, God, you're calling us to do this together. So we got engaged and got married. We really committed our marriage at the very beginning to say, God, we want all that you have for us. We sold my car. I quit my job to do the training school. And so we were living on one support income. We had one car, and it was definitely a big change from the big city lifestyle that I thought I would have. Our dear friend and pastors, Robert and Stephanie Herbert, asked us, hey, we feel called to plant a church in San Diego. Do you want to come with us?
We didn't really know that much about San Diego, but we felt called to our team. So we had been in this journey in San Diego. We were in a part of town that we loved. I thought we would be here for the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And I had a dream one night, and in this dream, I knew immediately that I was in Mexico. Then I see this woman. I ask her what she wants, and she says, I want another year to go by where I don't have to go see the doctor. Next scene, I'm next to my wife. We're driving in the car. We're going down a road, and I know we're not going to be able to make it. And Suzanne, in this dream, she lifts up her fist and she says, we can do it. And I immediately wake up. So I'm meeting with my pastor, Robert, a couple of days later. I share with him, I had a dream, and he's like, well, I wonder if we should really, start looking towards planting in Mexico. And as God would have it, in the next week, Joe Ewan is in town. Joe and I are having lunch, and I'm like, hey, so I had this dream. And Joe says, wow, I really think that's significant. I'm like, okay, wow, I mean, maybe, you never know, and I was shocked when a few hours later, he calls me on someone else's cell phone. He's like, Jonathan, I really think this dream is significant. I'm a little freaked out because my problem is I've talked to Robert and to Joe, and I haven't talked to my wife. I decided to take the risk, and I went to my house, and I was like, hey, Suzanne, I'm a little worried. I was like, so I had this dream, and this is what happened in the dream. So I was just making conversation with Robert, and he says, that's really significant. And I'm like thinking, why is that significant? Then I go and I share with Joe. Then Joe calls. He said he calls me back and says it's really significant. So I'm a little concerned that these guys that we really love and respect think that we're supposed to be a part of something happening in Mexico. And she says, I've actually always felt like there'd be a season that we would go and we would live in Mexico. And I'm thinking, what? I have never heard this before. I remember feeling like the weight fall on me, and I had this knowing moment. We're moving to Mexico.
I remember sitting in my house that I had always dreamed about with my 4 kids in schools that we loved, having friends that we'd finally built a relationship with over years and years in San Diego, and looking around at all of this and saying, God, are you really asking me to give up all this? And I feel like God gave me a picture of all of these Mexican people. And God saying, this is your inheritance. These people, your house can burn down, your school can change, friends can move away, but this inheritance will never spoil or fade. Will you give it all up for this inheritance?
Our very first year was just building relationship, and the people that God gives us, we're gonna be faithful with those people. This past year, we had our very first School of Transformation and had over 40 students in the school with 20 life groups throughout the city. And we are believing that God has called us as a church to touch thousands of lives.
Seeing our people go through these transformative processes and then have a heart and a vision for, now I'm gonna take what I've learned and go take it to these other cities in Latin America, that's our dream. That's absolutely what we wanna see.
We have our 4 kids and a dog here in Tijuana, Mexico, never in our wildest dreams thinking that we would be here. Yet at the same time, I can't help but think this is what we were made for. This is what we were called to. It was never my ambition to lead a church. It was never my ambition to be a lead pastor. And now I look up and I think, wow, God has done so much more than I could have ever imagined. We all have that struggle of how do we take it from World Mandate to Monday morning. It really does go back to the simple things. As you're faithful to say yes to the next thing, God can do more than you can ever imagine.